The subject of today's video was never supposed to play Power 5 football, yet alone ever see the field. He was a 2-star recruit coming out of high school, wasn't even a top 200 player at his position, and was originally committed to an FCS school. At that point, your chances of becoming the best cornerback in college football are pretty much zero. I'd even say they were less than zero if that was possible. You probably know who I'm talking about at this point, but the subject of today's video has become an absolute college football superstar this year and went from a 2-star recruit and someone who would be seen as an undrafted free agent to arguably the most important player in the rise of Iowa football and someone who could hear his name called on the first night of the 2022 NFL Draft. Yes, we are talking about Riley Moss. He set the college football world on fire in Week 1 against Indiana and has continued to be the most electrifying and fun player to watch on this team. Most of the time, guys like this are on offense, but Riley Moss is a defensive superstar, and anytime the ball is thrown his way, he's probably going to intercept it, and he may even take it back for a touchdown. At this point, if I had to bet, I would guess you know who Riley Moss is, but do you know anything about him before he became a star, how he was originally supposed to play FCS football, and how low his odds of becoming a star were? Well, in today's video you're going to find out, as we're going to tell the story of Riley Moss. But right before we get into today's video, be sure to subscribe, as nearly 80% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, and we can definitely do better than that. And also don't forget to smash that like button for the algorithm, and suggest another player I should take a look at next. Now, let's get started and talk about the rise of Riley Moss. In order to understand how Riley Moss got to this point, we first need to go back in time. He was born in a suburb north of Des Moines, Iowa, and he grew up a Hawkeyes fan. This was surprising though, as he grew up only 20 miles away from Iowa State, which is the Hawkeyes' rival. Moss was always a Hawkeyes fan though. His favorite player was a wide receiver by the name of Marvin McNutt, and apparently Moss grew up wearing a number 7 Hawkeyes jersey all the time. Him and his friends often reenacted one of the most famous plays in Iowa football history when McNutt would catch a 7-yard touchdown pass to win against Michigan State. McNutt and the Hawkeyes would play a crucial role in his childhood, and Moss loved football. He wasn't the best athlete in the world though, especially in 8th grade. According to his coaches and his parents, he got better each year though. He made a big jump in terms of athleticism in 10th grade, and he started to play varsity football at that point. This was at Centennial High School, which wasn't the smallest school in the world, but also probably wasn't known for producing big-time Division I stars, and his teammate was actually Jake Pinniger, who was a kicker for Penn State. Moss wasn't nearly getting that kind of attention though. He was honestly a better hurdler. He was a state champion hurdler in fact, and he ran the country's 3rd fastest hurdle time in high school track. It was 13.85 seconds, so obviously the speed was there, but in terms of his football skills, he wasn't cut out for the Power 5. When he did get on the field, he returned punts and kickoffs, and even had 2 touchdowns while he was there. He was also the team's 2nd leading receiver, as he had 6 catches for 167 yards and a touchdown. He also played on defense, and he had 29 tackles, and Moss was a guy who pretty much did everything. Because of that, he did have some football interest, especially from a very prestigious school known as North Dakota State. Without a lot of hesitation, he committed to the Bison and had this to say, quote, "I'm pretty excited. They have a tradition of success with all their championships, and that was the main reason I committed. They have the mentality that if you go in every day and do your work, you'll get something out of it. I like their success in developing players for the NFL as well, guys like Carson Wentz. Plus, they've also had a lot of defensive backs go from NDSU to the NFL. He ended up picking the Bison over offers from Northern Illinois, North Dakota, and South Dakota State. But there was one thing that could change the ballgame, and that was Iowa. The Hawkeyes had started expressing interest earlier that spring, and the reason they got into him was because he finished 2nd in the state in track. Still though, they didn't offer him. Moss decided to get the recruiting process done before his senior football season so he could enjoy the year and just be a kid. He also had a good friend who was in Fargo, and it just made sense that he'd go to North Dakota State. Moss had this to say, quote, "In the beginning of my recruitment, before any other offers happened, I was like, Iowa is that one team that could take me away from anything. And of course, they came in late after I committed to North Dakota State. Yep, that's exactly what happened, as on November 18th, Iowa's defensive coordinator invited Moss into his office and told them that they were out of scholarships for 2018 in the secondary, but he wanted to offer Moss a chance to gray shirt. This is basically promising a player a scholarship in the future, and Moss was very happy for that. After that meeting though, Moss did not send out anything on Twitter or on social media because he wanted to call the North Dakota State coaches to handle it properly and tell them the news. His high school coach said this, "Having his life goal of being a Hawkeye met, it was a no-brainer for him to flip to North Dakota State. He wants to do better and he wants more. And that's very encouraging from a Hawkeye standpoint. He wants more, and he wants to be successful as he goes forward." So yes, he obviously flipped to the Hawkeyes, and he wasn't even on scholarship at the time, and no one in the Iowa fanbase probably thought a whole lot of him, but his high school coach was his biggest fan and saw real potential in him at Iowa and had this to say, quote, "Who knows what's going to happen to him, but if he gets in that weight program and continues to develop as an athlete, things could change." So obviously he went from a 2-star recruit who was committed to an FCS school to the lowest ranked player in Iowa's 2018 class and someone who was probably never going to see the field. At least that's what many people thought. 24/7 Sports thought the same thing, as according to them, he was a 2-star recruit, the number 248 cornerback, and the 2,732nd best player in the class of 2018. When he got to Iowa, he wanted to play right away, and he didn't feel respected by anyone. He still did the right things though. He said, quote, "Every practice I would fly around and I would do everything right that I could. Even if I physically wasn't able to do it, I would hustle and do the things that anyone could do. So I think that's how I started earning some respect, and I saw some playing time my freshman year." He originally was a safety, but quickly moved to corner, and yeah, as he said, he played as a freshman. He became the Big Ten Freshman of the Week against Minnesota, as he had 2 interceptions in that game, and he would eventually start 5 games as a Hawkeye freshman. He would finish the 2018 season with 24 tackles and help them go to the Outback Bowl, where they beat number 18 Mississippi State 27-22. In 2019, Moss would be hit with somewhat of a curveball, as he ended up playing in 9 games, starting 1, and he missed 4 games due to an injury. His best game came against Miami, as he had 5 tackles, 2 interceptions, and 3 pass breakups, but overall 2019 was pretty disappointing for him. In 2020, Moss would start to blow up. He became a 3rd-team All-Big Ten selection, as he started all 8 games for the Hawkeyes. He recorded 43 tackles and 2 interceptions, one of which he took to the house. He also broke up 4 passes, and the guy was everywhere on defense. Going into 2021, he was a starter and someone to keep an eye on, but in terms of his NFL potential or him becoming a college football star, that was likely not going to happen, as maybe he'd be an undrafted free agent, and maybe he could crack the 2nd-team All-Big Ten. Instead, he's become the best corner in college football. You can argue all you want down in the comment section, but I truly do believe he is the best corner in the country right now. In their first game against Indiana, Moss played incredible. Indiana threw a pick just a few seconds into the game, and Moss took it back for 6 points. You could argue that was the lesser impressive play of the two, as a few minutes later before halftime, he read Michael Penix's eyes and took the ball all the way back for a touchdown. That play went 55 yards and helped Iowa destroy the number 17 ranked Hoosiers in their Week 1 game. The following week, in what was probably the biggest Cy-Hawk game of all time, Moss had 8 tackles in their win over number 9 Iowa State, and then the following week had 6 more tackles against Kent State. Both Moss and the Hawkeyes struggled for a little while against Colorado State, but Moss got back to his usual self, as he had 5 tackles and an interception in a dominating road win over Maryland. Iowa was ranked number 3 in the country for what in my opinion was the biggest game of the year so far, as the Hawkeyes hosted number 4 Penn State. Penn State went out to an early lead, but midway through the second quarter, Moss intercepted a pass from Sean Clifford, and this changed all the momentum in the game. Fortunately, he tripped over his own foot, and it looked like he went down with a knee injury. This happened while he was celebrating, and this was horribly sad. At this point, we don't know how long he will be out, but Kirk Ferentz said that he's optimistic, and I think with what's on the line and what we know about Moss, he's going to be out there whether he's fully healthy or not. So far in the year, he's had 23 tackles with 4 interceptions, and he's had 2 picks that have gone to the house. In my eyes, he's a first-team All-American, the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, and a big reason why Iowa is ranked so high. The Hawkeyes are honestly playoff contenders at this point, and this defense has been so much fun to watch. Moss has an incredible story from a 2-star recruit committed to an FCS school to someone who was never even going to play from Iowa, and now, in my eyes, he's the best corner in the country and someone who could be a first-round pick. What do you guys think, though? How good do you think Iowa is? Will Riley Moss be a first-round pick? And who's another player I could take a look at next? Be sure to let me know down in the comment section. Hit that like button if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.